the gun sound, go-to gun sound you made when you pretended to shoot guns as a kid, or did you not do that?
Oh, everyone pretends.
Yeah.
Really? You did Popeye Machine Gun? I didn't know.
I did Tommy gun. See?
But it sounds very much like a Popeye cartoon.
Fucking cut you in half with bullets, dude.
Yeah, it must have been. It must have been cap gun sound.
Pew!
I guess it must have been the sound of a cap gun. Did you have cap guns when you were a kid? Did you ever use cap guns?
Not until the age where you're messing with like M80 firecrackers and
real
cap
shit.
guns and such, and airsoft rifles and paintball guns. But I know kids who played with cap guns very young. I just didn't have them around.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's like
but
how
I coveted them mightily.
There's drugs that I bet I would have fallen prey to,
Sure.
or ruined my life or been a deep addict of, but I'm like, I don't know where I'd even begin to get that drug. Lucky for me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have black tar heroin around.
Thank God,
I never think about it.
Ayahuasca or whatever isn't on the corner.
Ayahuasca. Yeah. I will highly recommend if you play VR games out there, for which there's been depressingly little since like
it's been
Moss
terrible.
2. Yeah.
Terrible.
There's a game just called Ayahuasca.
Oh, really?
Simulates an ayahuasca trip that is awesome. Soothing, but
Is
trippy as hell. Except for this one part where bugs come at you. That part sucks, but you get through it.
Can someone verify that it's accurate?
My brother took ayahuasca in the official like ritual with a tribesman. But I haven't asked him that. I should and I shall. Welcome to 1Upsmanship! Wow!
Welcome.
Woo! This is the first 1Upsmanship we're recording after the great LA fire of 2025.
Well, really in the middle of.
That's right. It's not over. That's
there's still
true.
fires.
It's not contained.
Yeah.
But Adam has devacuated back to his...
That's right. I was on the lam for a couple of days, and fortunately, the PC that was generously given to us by iHeartRadio survived the fire. So I'm recording on it now. It's wonderful. I was very grateful.
No need to go on the lam, Adam. If you heard the news today, the Trump trial news, there's no laws. You're fine. You can commit crimes. No need to run.
You're just really putting this one square in the middle of a time
from
period.
The headlines. Time capsule. All right.
I love it.
Start date. 2:56 p.m. January 10th, 2025.
It's funny that you say
we are
that.
discussing Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Let's get into it.
Right. Another time-bound entry in the Call of Duty franchise.
Yeah. So let's pass our first checkpoint.
Bing.
And get into Tell Me Like I'm 8-Bit. Adam, I'd love if you could take this one off my hands, and then I'll do our next one.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Please explain.
Very happy to answer what Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is.
Or is this Special Ops? Black Ops.
It's Black Ops, yeah.
Yeah.
Black Ops 6. Okay, Call of Duty. Every year we have a Call of Duty with very rare exceptions. Most of them are not the best or are very careful reiterations of what we already did. In the recent history of Call of Duty, we had the Modern Warfare series rebooted, and then I think it's fair to say it fizzled out a bit. So it had been 3-4 years since we had a Black Ops entry, the last one being Cold War, which was one of the more popular ones. And this one, which came out in 2023, we're covering it because it is an interesting fusion of somewhat new mechanics into the franchise. At least that's one of the reasons why I asked us to cover it. But if you don't know what Call of Duty is, I don't know what kind of games you play, but it's not the ones people buy, because Call of Duty is the one people buy. It's still like that. This one has zombie mode. It has a very CIA paranoia conspiracy theory driven.
Cold War.
Yeah, it's like the Black Ops has a team of people that are in it. And characters they like to sort of keep telling, and they're doing these sort of dark political intrigue sorts of stories, which I think are kind of a fun departure for Call of Duty in some ways. And this one, the team has to go rogue to solve I forget exactly what the inciting incident here is because it blows my mind, but essentially they end up having to figure out there's a mole in the CIA. The CIA is the bad guy this time. And through a series of missions, and then clear their own name. and save America from yet another threat, but this time in the Clinton era, basically. And yeah, that covers it, don't you think?
Oh, right. It's not even the Cold War. It's just reminiscent of other movies
early
that would
90s.
be set in the Cold War.
Yeah, it's early 90s.
Very tail end of the Cold War, I guess.
Exactly.
Could you rattle off real quick some of the notable mechanics changes, or would you rather save that for when you can expand upon them?
I think I'll save it for when we can expand upon it a little bit. I don't know that mechanics changes is the right way to phrase it. If that's what I said, I apologize.
You might have said gameplay changes?
Yeah, just some new...
Go to the tape?
Yeah. There's some changes in the formula for this one, which is why
Formula. Okay. Passing the... I mean, I assume. I guess I'm wrenching them out of your hands because I said it.
Rip that checkpoint right out of my
Player
hand.
2 pulling a rank on... No, it's not a checkpoint. It's the Mario pipe sound, if you'll recall.
Mm.
Oh, no, I'm wrong!
Yeah, you are
because we're
wrong.
moving into gamer rant, so I'm player 1.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong again! Let's serpentine. I think it still counts as a serpentine if there's only 2 segments. Me to you, and then we're done. Yeah, but it's
technically
let's call it a serpentine.
You love it. You love serpentine.
It's like 2 is both even and odd. This is both a serpentine and a round robin. Okay, I'm going to do this with 2... Ooh, a double barrel shotgun metaphor.
I'm excited.
First barrel. If you've heard the show before, you know I have political issues with the way the Call of Duty franchise has gone. I had particular issue with the World War II one because to me it seemed to gamify and sort of superheroify the actual events of World War II while explicitly going like, well, we don't want to really get too into the Holocaust. That's depressing. And I actually find that offensive to the people who served and died in the Holocaust, which is not even a take. I do think we underserve our veterans and blah, 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 but that's not like my pet cause or anything. But I was like, I found that bump for me. So similarly, I don't like that we turned to, anyway, I found a way to say it real quick without bogging us down too much. And then I don't want to talk about this stance that much unless Adam has questions, because it's pretty cut and dried, which is in this game, the death screen says things like, death is but a temporary setback. When in doubt, pull the trigger. One of the resonant storylines is not all memories leave scars, which is literally saying like PTSD doesn't exist. We'll shrug it off. It's like the antithesis of what I believe. It's like, no, yes, they do know though. War does leave scars. That's the true story. And in Call of Duty 1, the quotes when you died were things like, the soldier above all prays for peace, for it is the soldier who pays that price. There's no honorable way to kill, it's a grim necessity. There's no gentle way to destroy. There's nothing good in war except its ending. Old men declare war, but it is the youth that fight and die, and only the dead have seen the end of it. The very first Call of Duty I was obsessed with, it led me to things like The Art of Thomas Lee and the poetry of Wilfred Owen. This leads back to things like Mission Impossible and Marvel movies. And that just seems like a shame to me. I also, so then my opinion on the game. So setting that behind.
Yeah. I think that's we can just stipulate that's true for all Call of Duties since Modern
Warfare. Or like
Warfare.
That will probably be my opinion of, yeah, they've moved into, we are action movies. Yes. We're not a history lesson.
Correct.
We're action movies.
Correct.
And I'm like, wah, wah, I don't like that, but it's fine. Star Trek did the same thing and I don't like it. That's just my taste.
Yeah.
Abrams wise, I mean. So anyway, as far as the game goes, had a hell of a lot of fun with it. I'd love to do the mechanic. Well, interesting. I'll say in the same breath that it really underscored to me that I never need to play an FPS again.
Yeah.
And I think it's Destiny 2 that did it. Great FPS. Very big, so I played it for hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I can't unsee that it's just clicking on stuff. I'm bored of the genre, and that's just there. But I found myself constantly going, yeah, that's smart. Oh, that's smart. Oh, that's an improvement over recent iterations. Yeah, that's smart. 2 things I really want to come down on, though, is I do think it's just the thing I hate most about storytelling right now, which is the Star Wars trilogy thing, which is it basically packages together and echoes. I thought this was a greatest hits release of just like zombie mode's a huge hit. Let's put zombie mode in there. People like the Cold War guys. People like this kind of level, this kind of level. It's like a greatest hits record from a popular band. And I feel like it's almost like artists have run out of, no, it's more like corporations are conservative and place conservative bets. And I do think this game stealthily is that. They did a good job of obscuring that fact, but it still gave me the cynicism, sadness of like, yeah, this was a very conservative bet. Or it's like, whoa, they've never had zombies in the main campaign.
Right.
And it's like, right, the only trick we pull anymore is Sonic's never met Mario, Batman's never met Superman. But at this point, it's like, yeah, Sonic met Mario 35 years ago. It's not a fun trick anymore that corporations consolidate IPs together. That's just mergers and acquisitions. Like, it's not a thing to me. It doesn't get my blood pumping. Other than that, I like it as like everyone who worked on this is super good.
Okay.
Whoever hires and maintains the talent level at the company is like hiring only the best people and using all their money to hire the best people who are doing a great job.
Yeah.
Except the writers. That's the other thing I want to harp on. And then I'm done with my rant. I'm just saying, Adam, if we hold this to movie dialogue standards, like think of the Cold War movies, even the middling ones.
Yeah.
Lines in this are like, you were told to wait for backup, but you played cowboy instead. Sir, our mission is to recover Alawi at all costs. So you want to explain to me why he's on a slab? Things got complicated.
Yeah.
Cut to a flashback. I'm like, all right, jerk off motion.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You scratch her back, but watch your own. Okay. Cool line. I'm done. Now Mario pipe sound.
I really appreciate how balanced that take was. I
don't have to be preachy about my opinion. You know what I mean?
I honestly think you're kind of right about this game. Player one. So I don't disagree with a single thing you said. I don't think. I do think there's some merit to two conversations, and this is why I wanted to cover this game. Just to exonerate Mike from the rage that some of you feel about us covering a Call of Duty. Usually when we cover a Call of Duty, it's me pitching, hey, this one has some interesting things to talk about. We both agree that Call of Duty, and if we're going to be fair, any war simulator is a little bit of an ethical question mark and deserves to be called out on that level to some degree.
Oh yeah, see previous episodes about how it's military propaganda or whatever. Yeah,
I would but that's one thing I want to talk about is,
great.
Do you think the alt history thing redeems the project at all? And like, what does it mean for, like, because that's kind of Black Ops' whole idea is we're doing sort of conspiracy theory exaggerated redux of a complicated American history period, basically, like the last generation. And we make lots of movies about that, and very few people kick up any dirt about that, right? It's like one of our favorite fucking things to do. You know, we give those movies Academy Awards. So it's interesting. This is the branch of Call of Duty that's trying to explore that question. We can argue about how effective it is. That's one thing I wanted to talk about. I don't want to say that War Simulator isn't a thing, but I do wonder if when you're doing conspiracy theory cowboy shit, does it still feel like we're propagandizing for yay military as much to you? That's one question. Everything you said is correct. I thought this game shows a really interesting move by probably gaming's biggest franchise to try to be a different game in order to stay relevant. And that was kind of fun. Like, for instance, it has an open world level in Kuwait. That's pretty cool. Like, the whole game could have been that. They did it very unsuccessfully in Modern Warfare 3, but like this was the entry that like, oh, they did figure out open world in Call of Duty. Actually, it's pretty good. I thought that was a great idea. They tried zombies as like a legitimate idea in the campaign. That was pretty cool. They tried just a bunch of different types of things you haven't seen in Call of Duty before that are slightly based in other more successful franchises right now. And I think that deserves to be acknowledged because Call of Duty is also tired of Call of Duty. You know what I mean? Like Call of Duty understands like, hey, we really just can't keep doing the same thing or else we're dead. And I think they've sort of safely scooted under parity a bit for this Black Ops strain, and that's given them a bit more creativity, and they're making better games when they do that.
It's interesting because something like
no, it's okay.
Something like Madden, all they have to do is go reeler and reeler and reeler is what we want.
Yes,
more true to life.
But Call of Duty can't
Call
do
of Duty's
that.
Like we're an artistic endeavor at this point.
We have to be
need to do to stay alive. Yeah,
we have to be, because we can't afford to make a game where you're shooting insurgents in Afghanistan explicitly. Like we can't have that. For a lot of reasons. One other interesting note here that I think just sort of deserves to be talked about is this game is the longest development cycle that a Call of Duty has ever had. Which is to say, they put the most time into this that Call of Duty's ever had, and I think it shows. I think the polish level on it shows. I don't know that it shows us that Call of Duty still has any new answers, but it's worth talking about for those reasons. That is my rant.
Excellently said.
Thank you.
And that takes us to our first commercial break.
Where we monetize this tragedy.
Right. However, if you played this act of the podcast well enough, you won't get a commercial. We'll just come right back.
Ooh.
But that's on you. Welcome back, winners. Only you get to hear this secret version of the podcast where we give our real opinions. They hear a divergent, fake bullshit. We're still Adam and Michael.
Yeah.
We're still talking Call of Duty, Black Ops 6. Let's pass another checkpoint and get into Game On.
Game
On. I want to answer your first question at the gate.
Yeah.
And it made me, this is why I love talking with you. It made me realize I hadn't even thought of that. I think as evidenced by the fact that I skipped that on my list of things to bitch about. Usually that really sticks in my craw.
You're most
and I
mad
didn't even
about
notice
that.
it this time.
Yes.
Right. Which is, if people don't know, the military is actually, in some cases, in some iterations of Call of Duty, directly involved.
They advise.
Yes. Approving and advising the material, which for some of us who hope to see an end to mankind's brutal slaughter of each other ever in the next 1,000 years, let's say, being conservative, we're like, is that okay? Or it gives us pause. But making it fantastical is totally fine. It's like, I'm not going to get mad at Atomic Heart for having guns in it, or whatever.
Yeah.
So well, I agree. That makes it fine.
That's the trick of this branch of Call of Duty, is that it's just unreal enough that you no longer think you're dealing with a political statement in the same way, even though it's very interested in politics. Like Black Ops has always been very interested in politics. The first game, you had like a Fidel Castro assassination scene, right? And like Reagan's been in it, JFK's been in it, like all.
Bill Clinton is rendered in this.
Is in it.
Like he is in it. Yes. Someone was like, my job today is make Bill
I got to
Clinton.
make Bill Clinton. And he's got to look good. He's got to look Call of Duty good.
He doesn't look 100,000% like Bill Clinton.
No, I mean you wouldn't get confused.
Well, that's what's funny is, of course, because I don't know why the cult of celebrity. I feel like everyone zooms in on, because you can't approach him. He's on stage, but you zoom through the scope.
You got to see him. Yeah, you have to.
Does that look like Bill Clinton?
Well, but that's like part of the intrigue of like. I think that's part of what makes this branch of this franchise fun, is like the historical fiction of it all. Like that
was what's funny, is I got more of a charge out, not from the zombies showing up. I was like, oh, Bill Clinton's in this. That was probably the highlight of the game for me in
100%.
terms of delight.
Me too. 100%. And see, like, it's the Inglourious Bastards thing, right? Where it's like, oh, it's fun because it's like slightly alt history. Like we're gamifying history a little bit. Right? Now, why doesn't that make us mad? Shouldn't it? Should that make us mad?
I mean, we can dig into it now if you
It's up to you.
want, but it's kind of aside. It feels like a bit of an aside, is that I do think, because of course you could go one step further and say anything that glamorizes guns, any game that glamorizes guns, blah, blah, blah. I think there are reasons those things are different.
Okay.
And I think everyone has to choose the line, but I have come to peace with where my line is on, as society or as a species, like how much can you expect most reasonable people to separate fantasy from reality, and how much blurring of that line becomes dangerous, where you're
right.
Wow, we're actually fucking people up or warping the way they like. I actually think there are some trends in pornography that are more warping and damaging to the human psyche as like a collective consciousness thing than playing Atomic Heart. I don't know why I keep bringing that up, but like fantastical FPS is where you blow up aliens. And I do think that's qualitatively different than a thing that literally pretends, that strives for a realistic war simulator, but also pretends that war is not that scary. And especially if they're being advised or paid by the guys whose literal job is to actually do real war and have people die in the process. That just starts to seem over the line to me, but the line is movable for sure.
So the argument that we've probably talked about in the past.
Also, what age are you matters, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. That I think is probably my favorite argument against the morals of Call of Duty is the idea that you slowly dehumanize certain groups of people by having them be the baddies you're shooting in the carnival game, you know? That argument makes a lot of sense.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right. So that's what's interesting about, like, Call of Duty is beholden to that problem, right? Like, that's a thing they always have to manage because Call of Duty can never really get away from, it is killing people. There's supposed to be people that would have existed, right? And they've retreated into unnamed country, Russia, or people in the past. You know what I mean? Like,
dude, I'm waiting for Call of Duty Medieval. Like when Spawn did that shit, or at least Civil War, you're like packing a musket.
I think we actually talked about the idea of a Civil War Call of Duty.
We talked about a hub world.
Yes. Yeah.
Where they keep adding DLCs that are different, like Assassin's Creed, but Call of Duty.
Call of Duty's done that.
Did they? Okay.
All Call of Duties now you can
Call
access.
Call of Duty World or some shit.
Call of Duty now is one thing. If you download all the games, you can access every game and multiplayer through it.
Right, but we were saying if they returned to their roots and sort of hybridized, still did big budget action tone,
right,
but went back to exploring various eras of war in history.
I would like that better.
Like the Crimean War or some shit.
In theory, is that, right?
Right, because it's the Cold War, but...
You know, and it's through a series of...
And we did the space one with Jon Snow in the
Future
fucking
War,
spaceship.
Advanced Warfare, or whatever
it is. At that point, I was like, is this Call of Duty?
Yeah, what is Call of Duty anymore? What duty are we being called to here? Is it to stop the White Walkers? Because it seems like it is. No, so I guess I'm just pointing out the parameters that change how we feel about the equation here, which I've done. I also wanted to say about this that I think one of the tricks to making parody feel like it's not offensive is that you have to choose things that still have emotional resonance, but that we're no longer immediately upset about. And that's the genius of Black Ops, right? Is that Black Ops knows we still care about the Vietnam War and about the Korean War and like those conflicts, right? Stopping communism, conspiracy stuff, but we're just out of that era enough that revisiting it is really more exciting and titillating than it is controversial and frustrating. Whereas the Modern Warfare branch is trying to make, hey, this is what is going on in the world now, and we instantly get offended by that for decent reasons, I would argue. So Black Ops is sort of soaring in because we're not the people that face those crises and saying, isn't this fun, right? Like, now what if you almost could shoot Bill Clinton? Hey, what if you assassinated Fidel Castro?
Well, which you don't, which is not a playable option. It's not like No Russian, Bill Clinton.
No, it isn't.
I did not have sex with that headshot. But it depends what the meaning
what
of
do you
it
mean
is.
by headshot?
Blam! I don't think a game other than a Newgrounds Flash game has presented a let's assassinate the president simulator.
I don't think
not
they
a AAA.
could do it.
Not a AAA. Yeah. But GTA, can you kill the president?
Like, let me put it this way. Like, so this is the thing that Dan Carlin says on the podcast Hardcore History that I think is actually really a profound observation, which is you could make a Genghis Khan game, right? And like if it was fun to play, people would be like lining up for that. That would be like, oh shit, that would be so cool. Play as a Mongol, do all this stuff. And
oh, that's what I was going to say is history moves on, and I think it's natural.
Yes.
Just like you can only care about so many people in your life, and your empathy becomes more abstract as you try to care about the whole world or mass of humanity.
Right.
As we say, right, like Abe Lincoln got headshotted so many years ago that it's okay. It has no emotional charge now. Dude, if you were alive at the time, that's 9/11. You're like, I can't believe that happened. That's mind-blowing, right? I'll never forget.
My argument is it's not even alive at the time. Is it still a fresh wound, right? Because, like, for instance, movies have been having a great time with World War II for a good 50 years. You know what I mean? Like, we've been making... World War II has occasionally been treated seriously, but sometimes in a very silly way. You know, like, go back to, like, Hogan's Heroes or, like... Catch-22 or whatever, because as soon as we got far enough away from the events to have perspective and them not to feel like an immediate conflict we were in anymore, suddenly we're interested in it and don't feel threatened by the political ramifications of doing art about it.
Well, once an event ends, I do think there's a lot of ways in which our collective consciousness is a macrocosm of individual consciousness, in the sense that once an event is done, then you process it, and art is one of the ways we do that, right?
Well,
that reminds me of a quote that's been popping up a lot lately.
Okay.
That is apt and sad and humorous and sort of everything at once, which is America won't just come to your country and kill all your people. Then they'll come make movies about how it made their soldiers sad.
Yep.
And you're like, that's legit, though. It did make their soldiers sad, but that doesn't cheapen that. From the point of view of the dead people, they're like, fuck you,
absolutely.
dude. Like, who cares
Absolutely.
who cares that Thin Red Line guys were sad when we're getting fucking massacred or whatever?
Well, here's like, I think maybe the most alarming idea about what could be coming in Call of Duty, right? This parody line and like this cultural memory thing that determines when something feels like it's too current and too propagandized to talk about is getting shorter. You know what I mean? Like that length of time that like you could imagine Call of Duty feeling safe doing an Afghanistan war entry. Like it feeling like we could do some fun stuff with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, by the way, in individual interactions, I think it's probably always been true that people cope by making jokes.
Of course.
So, like,
of course.
people made 9/11 jokes immediately, and I'm sure people made Grim Abe Lincoln jokes with that feeling where you go, I still recognize that it's a huge deal. We're doing this to cope, right? Like, Adam and I texted jokes about the fire.
Of course.
And also texted, I genuinely love you. I hope you're safe. But I don't think giant money-making properties do that.
They don't feel comfortable doing it.
Right, exactly.
But this entry...
They're not your friend.
But this entry is interesting because this is definitely living memory for most people playing it. Like the 90, like this is Persian Gulf 1, 1990? Maybe not most. A huge percentage of gamers were alive for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a huge percentage.
Right.
And like, is it that unreasonable to think that in 5 years we're going to get a bunch of September 11th stuff? You know what I mean? Or like a bunch of Persian Gulf 2? You know what I mean? Like, and that will feel very strange, I think, to people who can't move on, and yet culturally they will, and it'll be hard to keep this indignation about what's propagandized meaningful, I would say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that conversation might just be about when we are, not what they said.
Well, it's also trippy because I draw a correlation with that and the fact that we're all waking up to, we thought digital media meant all of our favorite movies and games would be accessible to us forever, because that's totally possible.
Right.
The technology
It
does
exists.
make that possible. But now it turns out, for financial reasons, we're all waking up to the reality that mankind, the human life, is but a flickering flame.
Right.
So mankind can only cram, like, I can only know so much history of the real world, not to mention fantasy worlds we all
trivia
together.
Yeah.
Right. So it sucks and hurts that I can't play, let's say, Escape Velocity, for example, though, if you know, you know. And I never will again, because it's just not unless someone painstakingly rebuilds it for browser or whatever. But I find that totally mirrors forgetting, or like, as you reach, it's even a part of my human being arc, as like I reach 40, I think you start to observe, oh yeah, totally. we rewrite history into a little story nugget because that's the only way you could really remember all this
you condense it. That's correct.
You
condense it.
And the further out we get, the more we're like, I remember like 3 things about Egypt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you're super into it.
And you have no emotional sense of it, which is fundamentally the thing that gets offended by Call of Duty, is like your moral emotional outrage is fundamentally emotional.
I bet it is different for people who are like, yeah, but my uncle fought in.
Yeah.
Or was deployed there.
But like,
I don't like you fucking with that. Or
neither you or I are going to argue there shouldn't be any video game stuff about war, right? We're not going to argue that.
Oh, right. Big note is I insisted at the end of covering this to add, and one of my notes was like, we have to cover Spec Ops: The Line,
which I'm playing
and
now.
I think also, if you know, like that will be a good balance to this episode.
I'm currently playing that now.
Dope.
And I'm sure that will be a fun question about satire. So I think we covered that topic. Do you want to talk about do you have anything you wanted to bring up, or can we talk about the new mechanic stuff or game loop stuff?
No, that's what I meant is in this game, I'm also looking forward to popping open the hood and being like, hey, did you notice that?
Yeah,
did you
let's
notice
do
that? And for the big bite out of the apple for me was I really like that we're going back to it felt like Call of Duty was trying to get more and more sophisticated or sleek or real.
Agreed.
And with this going to more fanciful, they've also done something that other games led the way on, but I love, is that we're going back to like chunky and highly gamified.
Yep.
And if y'all remember, the perfect analogy is like the way NFL Blitz enticed someone like me who doesn't give a shit about football to try it in the arcade is like, it's not overly complicated. We cut out some shit that D&D 3rd edition people would be like, but you have to track how many arrows you have left. And 5th edition people are like, I don't care about that. I'm more like an I don't care about that. So I liked that this game did seem to take on the ethos of like Doom Eternal, where they're like, if we give you a weapon, we're also going to present situations where you use it. We're not going to be like, well, in the military, they have these guns and these weapons, so that's what we have to replicate. They were like, what would be fun?
Yeah. Rocket launcher.
Better.
Sounds good.
I like that better.
Yeah.
And they're like, the menu is big and chunky and easy to navigate.
Yeah. Not the
and
multiplayer
I think I also
menu. That's a nightmare, but continue.
Oh, well,
multiplayer
see previous
is insane.
I also don't want to rehash, see previous episode, but I can't abide Call of Duty and other games that are doing this thing where a whole website essentially loads every time you load the game. And you're like, which of these tiles is the game that I bought?
Yeah.
It sucks.
Like, remember how Microsoft Windows used to be a clear, interesting platform that was like easy to use, and then they kept adding shit to it? That's how Call of Duty is now, where it's like as a multiplayer experience. There's so many fucking weird menus and stats and stuff. And I get that appeals to the probably, I'm going to guess 50% of the audience that will buy every iteration and knows everything. So maybe you got to make a game for them. But I'm having the same problem with Destiny, where it's like, hey man, this has become incomprehensible gibberish if you're not playing this all the time. You know, like, and I think Call of Duty used to be approachable. It used to be the approachable shooter. And it really is not anymore, I would argue. I'm guessing Fortnite's more approachable now. And, you know, Apex Legends and shit like that. You know, like they've conceded that ground. Anyway, what do you think about the idea of Call of Duty trying to become an RPG? Because it is in this game. It's trying to be an RPG.
I was going to say, on the other hand, I don't think chunky means... I don't think the same wisdom applies to the tech tree. Because this had the thing that I hate, which is where you can't unsee. All video games are simulated challenge.
Yes.
Obviously, the computer could show you the screen that says, hey, you win, you're a genius, anytime it wants.
You could always be a winner.
That's the game. Right. So I don't like things that draw attention to that because it makes me feel like, what am I doing with my life? And by that, I mean, this is a classic example. The tech tree where it's like, at level 1, your gun's accuracy increases 15%. At level 2, it increases 30%. At level 3, 50%. All the way up to your gun shoots straight. And I'm like, well, what are we doing here? I'm depressed now.
Yeah. I
hate
your control.
Now I'm reflecting on my life choices. That's the opposite of what I want a video game to do for me.
This game was fascinating in that it insisted on having like emotional dialogue with the characters. that was supposed to, like, there was sort of a rich layer of lore, basically, going on behind the scenes where, like, you could figure out interesting relationships between the characters that were going on. There was a puzzle that had multiple pieces that you could just search your home base to figure out. Like, and it led to all this weird conspiracy shit about, the Russian bunker that you're living in and, like, what happened there and what does it mean?
That political level we keep mentioning
Yes.
is weaponless for the first 80% of it.
Yeah. That's right. It is. There are many puzzles in this game. A lot more puzzles than you'd think. They're not very
But I do
tough.
think the fact that the team doesn't have a ton of experience with puzzles really shows, especially at a time where many of us are playing Great Circle.
Which is great.
Because, for example, one of the puzzles is that game Mastermind, where you just guess the slots. Yeah. Or I think there's a New York Times game that's a hit right now that's this. Wordle is kind of this. And it's like to open the lift, and the password you land on, or it's to open the elevator, and the password you land on is access lift. It's like, I don't know, guys, try harder on the puzzles. I did think do better on the puzzles, personally.
Well, so
the grappling hook, I'm like, Halo Infinite, though, was better.
Well, that's the thing.
Worked better than this.
Call of Duty's been slowly trying out other games and seeing if, hey, would you like to play this game instead of Call of Duty? Like Modern Warfare 2.
Or we can absorb it.
Yeah,
that's like what Apple does with the iPhone. Exactly. We can absorb it. Yeah.
Exactly. They're trying to meta Facebook this, where like we'll just buy it. So like in Modern Warfare 2, they brought all this like crafting shit from Last of Us, and it was like, what is this doing in Call of Duty, right? What I will say is this time I think they picked mostly right. I think the open world Kuwait idea, it worked. I think
I was gonna say as a best hits album, it's super well curated.
Well, but again, it's not a greatest hits of Call of Duty. It's a greatest hits of Call of Duty plus a bunch of other games that it hasn't been before.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a flight of.
It's a
ideas.
flight. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and I was talking with
it's almost a flight of different. Man, I never realized how much of working for the CIA was duck walking around.
Can you imagine?
Like the guy's quads must be
hulking quads.
Each episode is like, this would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We won't do a whole game of that, but this is pretty interesting.
Well, that's what I was kind of wondering as I was playing it. Is like, okay, so like, if they get some kind of feedback from these levels, like maybe make one whole game like this. You know what I mean? Like you have the resources, like, why don't you try a whole game that's this open world concept? Or, let's try your shooter RPG if you're so determined
I'm sure
to do
if
that.
they could, at this day and age, marketing research being what it is, I'm sure they could find out what levels hit.
So that's the question.
Down to that granular, like what levels did people love?
Right.
Let's just make one of those.
So that's the question is Call of Duty essentially only marketing for future games? Like, are all these games just trials?
What is Call of Duty? Now that we've mentioned the space one, it actually makes me be like, what is Call of Duty?
What unites it?
Or is it just a business entity that makes whatever the dominant FPS is?
I think it's become that.
At this point.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think if first person became problematic for whatever, or it really fell out of fashion, there'd be third person Call of Duties. Like they would absolutely do
they'd
that.
pivot. Yeah, at this point, they're just a business behemoth.
Yes.
It's like playing for the Yankees. It will always exist. You have a career there and step out and someone else comes in.
That's true. I mean, you don't win when you play the Dodgers, but that's absolutely true. It is like playing for the Yankees.
I don't know what that
means. You just set me up to make a little Dodgers plug, and I did it.
You're the last global gunslingers of a bygone era, but you're the only reason we're not all speaking Russian right now.
So let me ask you this last question on like a narrative level to see if you care about this. So as most Call of Duties in the last like 5-6 years have started to slowly bend back into, who's the real problem? America. You know what I mean? Rogue Americans.
They're totally going, it's more like, it's almost 4-quadrant mainstream now to think America's not doing great right now. But like, we definitely can improve. We kind of suck.
Yes.
All the way to America is completely broken. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go with the flow and say that.
Yeah. Do you think?
And I bet the people working there are like, bonus, I believe that. So, let's say it.
That's interesting. So you think before you kind of had to endure the Patriot porn to make a Call of Duty, and now now you.
No, I'm saying I think a lot of us are coming to feel that way. So I'm saying, like, statistically, I bet, or at least they're comfortable enough to keep working on the game, I guess, is my point, because they ended up, whoever I'm referencing completed their work.
Sure. That's interesting.
I unexpectedly found, also, I'm sorry, but I can't help but notice, in terms of conservative, like, corporate committee storytelling, of the mains, there are some side characters, like the kooky European guy who's like your gadget guy or whatever. Yeah. But there's one woman, one black man, one white man who's like named Jack and grizzled, stereotypical alpha male. And one guy in a wheelchair.
So two of those guys are
cookie cutter. Bro.
It is. Two of those guys are legacy characters, Mason and Adler.
However they navigate there, it's still mascots? Like, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's the Ghostbusters animated series.
Yeah, it is. Completely.
Let's do one of each. Anyway.
That is what they're doing. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
But the unexpected positive I wanted to pivot to was that, as I said, the actual act of, and it's because in the campaign specifically, I know this from way back, the appropriate, or at least a successful strategy for someone like me who is not amazing at nailing headshots very quickly, is to be conservative like a real soldier might and inch around, kill a couple guys, find out where they are, triangulate their position, kill a couple guys in the campaign. And that has become so rote and boring for me that, I mean, the actual bread and butter act of aiming at someone, seeing if I can hit them, is so boring to me now. It's like watching paint dry.
Just done too many. Huh?
I've just done it so much that I'm done with the genre. And there's other genres I could say that about. I'm starting to reach my limit with Metroidvanias. That's another
I'm not shocked
conversation.
By that. Yeah.
Or like I need a 5-year break before I'd be excited about one.
I understand.
But by the same token, PvP is the opposite. You know, AFE, people know the feeling. PvP is you're tense and jumpy because it's real people. You're like, fuck that guy. I found the PvP more appealing.
Did you play more of it with Dave or just yourself? Or
no, just randos.
Really?
I just mean for purposes of covering it, I hopped on, did PvP, and I'm like, actually, the thrill of this is at least engaging me. Whereas the campaign was not engaging to me, and it's not even their fault. Except that I've logged thousands of FPS hours, and I think I'm like almost ready to hang up my spurs.
Yeah, I understand. Unfortunately, that will never happen because
sure. Because we have to cover Halo
do.
too, or like we can't not. Someday.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like you're gonna always want to cover a point and click, and once
Spec Ops, I believe, is third person.
It is
totally different experience.
It's a little different, but we'll talk about that. When the day comes, which is probably not that long. I understand that Call of Duty doesn't really need us. We don't need to keep playing Call of Duty for the artistic endeavor so much. I do like playing it. I find it fun. The only other Call of Duty I could ever see that would merit a discussion for us on a narrative level is Call of Duty Warfare 2. Where that's when the franchise became an action movie for the first time.
Warzone? Or is there another one? Warfare.
Warfare 2. So we did Call of Duty Warfare.
No, I'm saying that's a separate spinoff or subtitle of Call of Duty. There's so many.
Warfare.
Modern Warfare. Call of Duty Warfare.
Modern Warfare.
Modern Warfare. That I'm well aware of.
The Red Dawn one.
Sorry.
The one that's Red Dawn.
You dropped out for a sec. It was your voice. Fuck it. Ruining the pod.
All good.
Yeah, Red Dawn was good. The Red Dawn ripoff one was quite fun.
That's the one that maybe deserves some conversation because it was sort of a pivot point.
Sure. Yeah.
But in general, I think I agree with you that there's, barring a major pivot in this franchise, what else is there to say about it? You know, it always looks good. Every year it looks better. I like the conspiracy stuff for this branch. Yeah. I think Black Ops, the first one, was kind of fun because it was adventurous, but you know, do you care about the conspiracy stuff? Is that interesting to you at all?
No, as I said, this was so thoroughly middling that it reminded me of something I said at this point, years ago, which is that one of my missions with this is when a game does take a narrative swing. Basically, when a game is like a movie, I would like to start holding the medium to the standards of, if this was a movie, would I think this dialogue is Because in some cases, it's like, no, I would even call it incoherent. Why do we accept this from video games, another medium I love just as much, that's just as capable of telling amazing stories as we've seen at this point? But
not many are well written in a human way. Like most,
but we've covered
the ones that are
a handful that prove it's entirely
it's definitely
possible. That's all I'm saying.
It's definitely possible. But most video games, including Call of Duty, are so busy montaging narrative to you that
right. Or providing a power fantasy,
Yes.
which is inherently not narratively dynamic.
I would argue this script is not like that much worse than Armageddon. You know what I mean? Or like a movie like that.
Really?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I mean, it's been a while, like since I watched Armageddon. Maybe I'd watch it and be like, oh shit, no, forgive me. But I think
Let me throw some of you
I'm
that
ready.
I wrote down.
I'm ready.
And you tell me. I guess my point is, it just made me. This game made me remember that quote and that standard.
I also
and that mediocrity.
I also noted.
I thought the Cold War was over. Yeah, but the world is more dangerous than ever, and I see that now. Well, what do you want us to do about it? What you've always done.
Yeah.
Protect us. Yeah, all right. And then I will say in Kuwait, because I do the thing where you soften up all the side quests and weak targets and then complete the main, right?
Okay. Oh, wow.
For open world stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to do that. So I did in this, I happened to trigger these 3 dialogues in quick succession, and I found them so funny. Right when you start the open world segment, if you want to get on Gladney's good side, take out those SAM sites. Then when you're down to one more SAM site left, we just might get on Gladney's good side. Then when you destroy the last one, that's all the SAM sites. I think we just got on Gladney's good side. It's like, hire me to write this. Hire Adam or Dave to write this.
Well,
like, at least pay us $1,000 to do a punch-up pass. That's the thing that will boggle me till the day I die. That I know so many writers, like, it's not expensive, who for no money, and like so many thousands of hours go into making this thing. And I'm like, you could pay even Daniel O'Brien, $10K to do a punch-up pass on this, and all your dialogue would be way better than this. Or like, it's not expensive to find a good writer. It really isn't.
So I think Call of Duty always errs on the side of the players will never remember anything.
Or give a shit about that.
So we gotta all. I don't want to get too like saucy with this. I think it's the Christopher Nolan school of storytelling, right? Christopher Nolan loves to exposition you to death so that you remember stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like video game creators, especially Call of Duty creators in this open world, are like, are they even going to remember what they did? What if they didn't do them in order? Blah 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 blah. Right? So you got to keep remembering the good side and who it is.
Remember Gladney?
Yeah. Nope.
Remember what his motivation and want is? Yeah.
I love
my last gripe
really
is super. Did this happen to you? Super annoying to me. How? In fact, I only thought of it because a cutscene happened where they recon, not shooting at someone, through the sniper scope.
Mm-hmm.
Just use it as a scope to look at something. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. I forgot, or I need to remember to do that. Then every time you do it, they go, hey, don't shoot that guy. He's on our side. And I'm like, I know. I'm
just
at
looking
him
at stuff.
like you do. Yeah.
I'm an adult. I know when to shoot,
Yeah. But good level design,
a lot of
really
fun.
good ideas for refreshing. They're like I think they are aware of people like me, where they're like, okay, so it's not all just shooting. Let's have them do different rock climbing and grappling and fighting a monster.
I think we're underestimating how Call of Duty designers themselves are trying to stay entertained by their game. You know what I mean? Like some of these choices feel to me like designers who really want to keep playing Call of Duty and have a reason to. At least they're trying stuff. I like that. I appreciate that this franchise doesn't rest on its laurels, even though it prints money. But that's probably, speaking of printing money, the right time for us to go and do our second commercial, unless, of course, you found the hidden message, in which case you'll skip right to our next segment.
And the hidden message is drink Ovaltine.
Drink Ovaltine. Beautiful Ovaltine. Have you seen
When did that movie come out? 1904?
Did you know that they made a sequel to it?
Oh yeah,
I didn't watch it.
Yeah. Not too
Okay.
long ago, within the last decade. I
yeah,
think
it blew my mind. I was like, oh boy, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I find that movie grungy and
it's sad.
depressing.
Yeah, it's really sad.
It's a sad.
I agree.
movie,
I don't
yeah.
feel good about it.
It's funny. It feels like your grandpa being nostalgic about the 40s, but everything he says, you're like, that doesn't
sounds bad.
Sound good.
It sounds like a thing you'd rather forget, Gramps.
Yeah. I remember eating dust out of the.
Yeah. Maybe forget that, Grandpa.
So let's pass our last checkpoint and get into Keep or Delete, where we decide whether this game belongs on the Celestial hard drive. Adam, are you prepared to update the spreadsheet?
I'm so prepared, but I also feel very confident that I don't need to because I know.
Oh, well, we need to make a note of it.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you have at your fingertips, are there any calls of duty?
There's one Call of Duty on here, and it was by, it was us deciding this over a hard drive episode when I talked you into Modern Warfare, keeping Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And
that has the Scottish guy with the mutton chops, who's the best Call of Duty character by far.
I think he is. I agree. I think they're trying to make this Adler guy who's always in sunglasses a guy like that, and it's like, nah, I don't see it.
Russell Crowe from the
basically. Thing. Yeah, basically. You keeping this?
His name's not Russell Crowe. Fuck is his name?
Who, the actor?
Yeah, from the
Adler is the name of the character.
Snake Plissken. No. I'm see, this is how you know I'm.
No, I don't. Now I lost you. I'm sorry.
You don't know who plays Snake Plissken?
Yeah. From Escape from New York, Kurt Russell.
Yeah,
he does look like Kurt Russell. You're right.
Kurt Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
At least there's a reason my neurons misfired that way. Okay.
You keeping?
Master and Commander.
You keeping it?
Gladiator. No, cut. That's a cut.
That's a delete.
It's cut for me, dog.
Yeah. I also am gonna delete, surprising no one. But
great conversation though. We're good at this.
Well, so sometimes we might pick a game knowing we're not gonna keep it because it brings up interesting conversations about the art form, which we hopefully we provided today. So if somebody was listening to this like terrified, my God, are they going to keep Call of Duty Black Ops 6? No, we're not. We know. We're not going to keep a stupid game.
It goes the way of Sinuous Saga.
I love that you kept Hellblade. That made you so pleased that you kept it. Also, I think you got some comments on that episode that people were thrilled that you stood your ground. You know?
Well, it's like that. It's that big one that makes you feel really seen as a human being. And I honestly never even expected to get that from a video game. I wasn't even looking for that. Yeah.
Well, anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on the next episode of 1Upsmanship.
Work complete.